Was I really a monster for trying to make my husband face his fear? Everyone keeps acting like I wanted to hurt him. I did not. I wanted him to stop acting like water was some invisible enemy. He was a grown man, my husband, and he still panicked near pools, rivers, lakes, even small boats. He always had the same story. Something about almost drowning in a river when he was a child. Something about his parents pulling him out at the last second. Something about trauma. I heard it for years. And after a while, I stopped hearing a tragedy. I heard an excuse. So when I pushed him into the pool at our family party, I thought I was forcing him to finally grow up. I expected panic. I expected laughter. I expected him to finally understand how ridiculous he looked. I did not expect him to climb out of that water dripping and shaking and end our marriage in front of everyone we knew. I am Nadia Price, 34, and I plan luxury private events for people who pay too much money to look effortless. So yes, I know what a scene is. I know when a room is turning dull, when people need a joke, when one small push can make everyone wake up. Of course, people now act like I was cruel from the start. They leave out the years I spent living around Ethan's fear like it was another person in our marriage. By the time I pushed my husband into that pool, I was not trying to hurt him. I was trying to make him stop hiding. Ethan was not a bad man. I need that said first because everyone loves making things simple after they choose a side. He was steady, quiet, useful in the way a locked door is useful when the storm is outside. In our first year together, he made pancakes every Sunday morning while I sat on the counter and planned trips we could not afford yet. One morning, he drew a beach town on a napkin. 2 streets, 1 pier, a little square for the hotel. He said we would go there one day, and I kept that napkin for months because it made me feel chosen. Then we actually went. The hotel had white balconies and a pool so blue it looked fake. I had packed 3 swimsuits, sunscreen, and that soft blue towel we bought together at a gas station because I forgot mine. I remember walking toward the water, happy, already seeing the photo in my head. Ethan stayed under the umbrella. At first, I thought he was tired. Then I thought he was being sweet, watching the bags, buying drinks, telling me to enjoy myself. Of course, that was Ethan's style. He could be present and absent at the same time. He could stand 6 feet from me and still feel like a locked room. When I asked him to come in, he touched his wedding ring and smiled in that small way he had. I knew that smile. It meant he wanted the subject gone. It meant I was supposed to understand without making him explain. I did make him explain. That night, back in the hotel room, with the air conditioner too loud and my wet swimsuit hanging over the shower rod, he told me the river story again. He said he was 7. His family had gone for a picnic. He stepped where the mud looked dry, slipped, and the current pulled him under before anyone could reach him. His father dragged him out by the shirt. His mother screamed so hard that he still heard it sometimes when water covered his ears. He asked me, softly, if I could stop treating pools like they were nothing to him. I told him I understood. I did then. For a while I did. I stopped asking him to swim. I stopped inviting him into hotel pools. I stopped teasing when he chose restaurants with no view of the marina. 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. Then a year passed, and the fear was still there, sitting between us at every summer plan. The husband I had married could fix a broken sink at midnight. He could build shelves without instructions. He could sit through my mother's long dinners and never complain once. But a lake could make his hand shake. A pool could make him step back. A child with a water gun could make his jaw tighten. After a while, I stopped hearing trauma. I heard excuse. The first real joke happened at dinner with another couple. The wife talked about a boat trip, and Ethan said we might skip it. I laughed and told them my husband liked water best when it stayed in a glass. They laughed. Not cruelly. Just enough. Ethan did not. He touched his wedding ring, looked at me and said that almost drowning was not really a punchline. He said it calmly, like he was correcting the time on a clock. That annoyed me more than anger would have. If he had shouted, I could have called him dramatic. If he had walked out, I could have called him childish. But he only sat there, calm, making me look like the problem in a conversation I had started to make him look small. So I smiled wider. I told him I was only trying to help him not be so serious. Of course, he went quiet after that. Ethan always went quiet when he had no way to win. At least, that was what I believed. By the next summer, I had a plan forming in my head. Not a cruel plan, a practical one. If words did not work, maybe a little pressure would. If comfort kept him trapped, maybe embarrassment would move him. And if everyone else laughed first, maybe he would finally understand how ridiculous his fear looked from the outside. The next summer gave me too many chances to prove my point. That was how I saw it. Not as cruelty, not as some campaign against my husband. A person can only watch the same fear control the same room so many times before they start thinking the fear is getting more respect than the marriage. We went to a lakeside cabin with 3 other couples and my best friend, Maya. The place smelled like pine, charcoal smoke, and wet wood. Everyone arrived with coolers, towels, speakers, and that bright vacation mood people get before they start drinking in the afternoon. Ethan arrived with a toolbox. Of course he did. One of the deck chairs was loose, and before anyone had even opened the first bag of chips, my husband was kneeling beside it, fixing the screws like he had been invited there as maintenance. The other men were already near the dock, shirts off, laughing about who would jump first. Their wives were taking photos. Maya was holding 2 cans of hard lemonade and asking why my husband looked like someone's careful uncle. I laughed because it was easier than defending him. That was the first small choice. I told Maya that Ethan liked vacations best when he could repair them. She laughed. Then I said everyone should be careful not to splash him because he might file a complaint against the lake. The doc laughed too. Not everyone. Enough. Ethan looked up from the chair. His hand went to his wedding ring. Thumb over metal. 1 slow turn. I saw it and felt that old irritation rise in me. There it was again. The little signal. The quiet warning that meant I had gone too far, even though nobody else thought so. I told myself he was doing it because he could not handle being teased. I told myself grown men should not need their wives to protect them from jokes. The first exchange came after lunch. He found me near the cooler, away from the others. His shirt was still dry, his face was calm, which made me defensive before he even finished speaking. He asked if I could stop using the river story in front of people. He said he had told me that story because I was his wife, not because he wanted it passed around like a funny fact. I heard control, not pain. So I told him he was making me responsible for a fear he refused to work through. I told him I could not spend every summer pretending water was a loaded gun. I told him I had been patient for years. 1 year, 2 trips, 3 ruined plans. Counting helped me when I felt cornered. He said he was not asking me to fix him. He was asking me not to use the worst day of his childhood as entertainment. That sounded dramatic to me. Of course it did. Ethan always knew how to make 1 sentence heavy enough to crush a whole afternoon. I told him I had made 1 joke. He looked toward the dock, where Maya was waving me over, and said it had not been 1 joke for a long time. Then he went back to the chair. That was the thing about my husband. He could say something like that, something sharp and clear, then return to tightening screws like nothing had happened. He never fought in the way I understood fighting. He did not throw words back. He took them, folded them somewhere inside himself, and became harder to reach. By sunset, the lake looked like dark glass. Everyone else had swum at least once. The husbands had carried the wives into the water. The wives had shrieked and kicked and laughed. Even Maya, who hated lakeweeds, let one of the men pull her off the dock. Ethan sat at the picnic table cutting lemons for drinks. My husband. The lemon man. I said it under my breath to Maya, and she bent over laughing. She was always good for that then. Maya made my worst thoughts sound like comedy. She had been divorced for a year and treated every marriage like a show she was lucky not to be trapped inside. When she looked at Ethan, She did not see the man who had held my hand through my father's surgery. She saw a quiet husband with dry clothes at a lake. That was easier for me too. Later, Caleb came over. Caleb was Ethan's oldest friend. He had known him before me, before the job, before the house, before the polite version of him that people met at dinner. Caleb was not loud, but people listened when he spoke because he never wasted words. He asked if Ethan was doing all right. I told him Ethan was fine. I said he was choosing to sit out, like always. Caleb looked at me for a second too long. Then he said Ethan had tried swim therapy 2 years earlier. Adult lessons. A specialist. Early mornings at an indoor pool before work. He said Ethan stopped after a panic episode in the shallow end. I did not know that. For 1 second that should have mattered. Instead, I felt insulted. My husband had kept a whole attempt from me. Not because I would have laughed, I told myself. Because he knew he had failed. Because he knew I would ask real questions. Because it was easier for him to hide another unfinished thing and then act wounded when I got tired of waiting. I told Caleb that trying quietly and quitting quietly did not count as growth. Caleb did not argue. He just looked toward Ethan, who was stacking plates by the cabin door, and said I had no idea how hard he had tried to be normal about it. Normal. That word stayed with me. I hated that Caleb used it like I was asking for too much. I was not asking for a hero. I was asking for a husband who could stand near a dock without looking like the lake had a hand around his throat. The second exchange happened that night in our room. The cabin had thin walls and a ceiling fan that clicked every few seconds. I was brushing my hair, counting the clicks because I did not want to talk. 4 clicks, 5, 6. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. He asked why I always needed an audience when I was angry with him. I told him I was not angry. I was tired. He asked if making people laugh at him made me feel less tired. I hated how specific that was. Specific questions made it harder to escape. I could handle big fights. Big fights had smoke. You could hide in smoke. But Ethan asked clean little questions and then waited as if the answer mattered. I told him he was twisting things. I told him people laughed because the fear looked ridiculous from the outside. I told him maybe if he could see it through normal eyes, he would want to change. He touched his wedding ring again. There. Again. I looked at his hand and said he did not get to act wounded every time I told the truth. He said he did not know how many more times he could explain the same wound to the same person. I said maybe he should try explaining less and doing more. After that, he slept facing the wall. Of course, I told myself that was his choice too. The silence, the distance, the cold shoulder. Ethan always had a way of making me feel like I was yelling into an empty house, then acting like my voice was the problem. So I made my voice useful. At a hotel pool a few weeks later, I splashed him. Not a lot. Just one quick flick from my fingers while he stood near the lounger with our drinks. The water hit his cheek and collar. His whole body reacted before his face did. Shoulders tight, breath caught, eyes down. It was small, but people saw. A woman beside us smiled awkwardly. Maya, who had come with us for the weekend, laughed too loudly. I laughed with her because the alternative was admitting the reaction bothered me. I told Ethan it was just water. He wiped his face with the blue towel. The same towel from our first beach trip. The one that used to feel like proof we had become the kind of couple who took vacations together. Now he held it like a shield. I told him to dry off his dignity while he was at it. Maya made a sound into her drink. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a warning. I chose to hear the laugh. Ethan did not answer. He folded the towel once, then once more, and set it on the chair beside him. Neat. Careful. Like even the towel deserved more patience than I did. That was how I framed it. My husband had patience for objects, for chairs, for sinks, for maps, for bills, for strangers who asked boring questions about his work. With me, he had silence. At a family barbecue in July, the jokes got easier. There was a small inflatable pool for the kids and Ethan still stepped around it like it had teeth. His mother watched him from the patio with that soft, worried face I had grown tired of seeing. The mother, always ready to protect him. I said he should be careful because the toddlers had taken over the deep end. A few cousins laughed. His mother did not. His father looked down at his plate. Ethan's hand moved to his ring again, and I nearly rolled my eyes. I had started to hate that gesture. It felt like a private conversation he was having without me. A little marriage ritual where I was the villain and he was the patient man surviving me. So I pushed harder. When someone mentioned a boat trip, I said Ethan could come if the boat had seatbelts and emotional support pillows. When someone asked about a water park, I said my husband preferred land-based marriage. When a child ran by with a water gun, I told him to spare Uncle Ethan because he had suffered enough. The child laughed. That should have been harmless. But Ethan looked at the child, then at me, and his face changed in a way I did not like. Not anger, not shame, something flatter. He asked me later beside the trash bins, not to pull children into it. I told him I had not pulled anyone into anything. I said he was making a family joke sound like a crime. He said the joke had a body count now. His mother, his father, Caleb, kids, people who did not know what they were laughing at. That phrase annoyed me most. Body count. So dramatic. So Ethan. I told him if he did not want people laughing at his fear, he could stop feeding it. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said nothing. Of course he said nothing. That was where he always left me, with the last word and no victory inside it. By the end of that summer, I had built a whole argument in my head. Ethan's fear was not just his fear anymore. It shaped our trips. It shaped our invitations. It shaped the way people saw me beside him. I was the woman with the careful husband. The dry husband. The husband who carried towels and fixed chairs while everyone else lived. I hated how that made me look. And maybe that was ugly. But it was honest. I wanted a man who could stand beside me in the middle of a bright, loud life. Ethan kept choosing the edge. Under umbrellas, beside coolers, behind cameras, near exits. So I started thinking about pressure. Not danger. Pressure. A push toward the thing he feared. A fast moment. Public enough that he could not hide inside it. Safe enough that nobody could call me cruel without sounding dramatic. I did not have the exact plan yet, but I had the shape of it. Water. Witnesses. Laughter first. Then change. By August, the jokes had stopped feeling like jokes to Ethan. To me, that only proved they were working. People always want change to be soft. Gentle talks, patient steps, private progress. Of course, that sounds nice when you are not the one married to a man who treats every pool like a cliff. So when Ethan's cousin invited everyone to a birthday cookout with a pool, I saw a chance. Not the final lesson, just a smaller one. The backyard was loud and bright. Kids jumped into the pool. Adults held paper plates under a white canopy. The air smelled like barbecue smoke and chlorine. Lauren came with her phone already in her hand because every party was content to her. Maya came because she never missed a chance to watch other people's marriages from a safe chair. Ethan came in beige shorts and a linen shirt. No swimsuit. Of course. He stepped through the side gate and stopped when he saw the pool. Not for long. Just enough for me to see his body measure the distance. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps from the water. He counted exits. I counted embarrassments. The first one came before lunch. A child asked Ethan if he was going swimming. Ethan smiled and said he would stay dry today. The child would have moved on, because children usually accept simple answers. I gave him a better one. I told the child not to pressure Uncle Ethan because 3 feet of clean water had already beaten him. A few adults laughed. The child laughed harder because children follow tone before meaning. Ethan looked at me. His hand went to his wedding ring. That slow little turn again. I read it as weakness, a quiet warning, a silent way to make me feel cruel without having the courage to say it loudly. Ruth, his mother, did not laugh. She stood near the food table with a plate in her hand, looking pale before anything had even happened. Caleb stood by the cooler and watched me too. the mother, the friend, both ready to protect him from a joke. So I made the joke bigger. When Lauren lifted her phone to film the kids jumping, I stepped into the frame and said she should catch Ethan in the background for contrast. Every pool party needed one grown man supervising from land. Lauren smiled. The phone stayed up. Later, near the drink table, Ethan asked if I could leave him out of the videos. His voice was calm, specific. That always annoyed me most. I told him nobody was filming him. I said he was making himself the center of something that was not about him. He looked at Lauren's phone, then back at me. He said he was asking before this became another night we could not take back. Another night. So dramatic. I told him he was ruining the mood. I told him I had spent years adjusting around him, and I was allowed to make one light comment without being treated like a criminal. His thumb touched the ring again. I walked away first. The afternoon got louder. Kids left wet footprints on the concrete. Music played too close to the speakers. Ethan stayed near the edges, helping his aunt carry trays and fixing one broken folding chair. Always useful, always dry. The husband, the helper, the man who could repair the party but never join it. Then I saw the plastic cup. It sat near the pool, half full of water. I picked it up before I had time to make the choice look complicated. Ethan was standing under the canopy with the blue towel folded over one arm. One of the kids had dropped it, and of course he had picked it up. That towel was from our first beach trip. Back then, it looked like a promise. Now, it looked like a shield. I walked toward him smiling. I said I had found Ethan's natural enemy. Then I flicked the water onto his shirt. Not poured, not dumped, flicked. A small spray across his chest and neck. His reaction was not small. His shoulders snapped tight, his breath caught. His hand closed around the towel. For 1 second, the whole backyard saw something old come up through him. Fear. Real fear. The sound around us thinned. The music kept playing. The kids kept yelling. But the adults closest to us went quiet. I hated that quiet. So I laughed into it. I said everyone had seen that. I asked how I was supposed to respect a grown man who reacted to water like it was fire. I said fear only survives because people keep feeding it. Someone laughed. Not many. Enough for me. Ethan looked down at the wet spots on his shirt. Then he dried his neck with the blue towel. Slowly, carefully. He folded it once, then again. Then he placed it over the back of a chair. Neat. Done. I read that as defeat. Caleb stepped forward, but Ethan gave one small shake of his head. Caleb stopped. Ruth set her plate down. Daniel looked at me like I had broken something in his house. Lauren's phone was still up. I saw it and liked it for half a second. Video made things real. Video proved I was not inventing how ridiculous Ethan looked. Ethan walked inside. I stayed outside. That was another choice. Maya came to me and said maybe that one had been a little much. Not wrong, not cruel, just a little much. So I told her Ethan needed to stop making everyone responsible for his childhood. She nodded, but slowly. Her agreement did not feel like applause anymore. 10 minutes later, I went inside. Ethan was in the guest bedroom, sitting on the bed with the blue towel in his hands. His wet shirt was folded beside him. Always folding. Always making things smaller. He said a wife should know which parts of her husband are not for public use. For 1 second, I saw the river. Not the story. The child. The water. The mother screaming somewhere above him. 1 second. Then I saw myself standing in a guest bedroom, being corrected by my husband like I was a child. The door inside me shut. I told him he was turning one uncomfortable moment into a tragedy. I said I would not spend my life whispering around water because he refused to grow. He touched his ring again. I told him not to do the quiet, wounded husband performance. He looked down at his hand and let it rest on his knee. That should have pleased me. It did not. By the time we drove home, Ruth barely touched my shoulder goodbye. Daniel told Ethan to call later. Caleb walked us to the car and stopped when Ethan shook his head. The mother, the father, the friend, all of them gathering around him over a cup of water. In the car, I told Ethan his family treated him like glass. He said maybe glass breaks when people keep testing it. I said maybe glass should stop pretending to be a wall. That was the last full sentence either of us spoke that night. The next morning, the blue towel still smelled like chlorine. I dropped it into the laundry basket with everything else. A towel was a towel. A joke was a joke. And if Ethan wanted to act like I had wounded him, maybe the next lesson needed to be clear enough that he could not hide behind silence afterward. After the birthday cookout, Ethan became quieter in a new way. Not colder. Not exactly. Coldness still needed contact. This was different. He moved through the house like someone who had already packed part of himself and left the rest behind for later. Of course, I told myself that was his choice. The husband wanted silence, so he got silence. The husband wanted to act wounded, so I let him carry the wound. I still cooked. I still answered his texts. I still slept beside him. But something in me had stopped chasing him back into the room. 1 day, 2 days, 3 dinners with the television doing all the talking. Then the invitation came. Ethan's parents were hosting a late summer family pool party in their backyard. Ruth wanted something simple. Food, music, children in the pool, adults on the patio. She asked me to help with the setup because that was what I did for a living. That was the part everyone forgets. I did not crash someone else's party. I was asked to shape it. So I shaped it. At my office, I made a clean little list. Drinks, lights, towels, folding tables, games for the kids. A playlist that started soft and got louder after sunset. I wrote poolside photo corner, then crossed it out, then wrote it again. Lauren leaned over my desk and asked if this was the family with the husband who hated water. I told her Ethan did not hate water. Water had simply never lost a fight against him. She laughed and said that needed to be on a napkin. I laughed too. It felt good to hear the room land where I wanted it again. Maya came over that night with takeout, and I showed her the party board on my laptop. She smiled at the lights, the menu, the floating candles. Then she saw the little note I had written near the schedule. Sink or swim moment. Her smile faded. She asked what that meant. I told her it meant nothing serious, just a joke, a small push, a little public pressure. The kind Ethan could not run from because people would be there. The kind that would prove the fear was bigger in his head than in real life. Maya set her food down and said maybe I should not use the word push. That annoyed me. I told her she was starting to sound like his mother. I told her everyone had treated Ethan like glass for too long, and I was the only one honest enough to stop padding the world for him. She did not argue. She also did not laugh. That was new. The next evening, Ethan found the printed guest list on the kitchen counter. His name was circled because I had been counting adult plates. Nothing more. But he looked at it like it was a warning. His hand went to his wedding ring. I hated how fast I saw it now. He asked if the party had to be built around the pool. I told him it was a pool party. I said people did not host pool parties in the garage. He said he was not asking to cancel it. He was asking whether I could leave him out of the jokes. Specific again. Calm again. Making one clean request so I would look ugly if I refused it. I told him he had already turned every summer plan into a negotiation. I said I was not going to redesign his parents' backyard around one childhood memory. He looked tired when I said that. Not angry. Tired. Then he said the river was not one memory to him. It was the day the world disappeared under his feet. For a second, the room got smaller. He stood by the counter in his work shirt, one sleeve still rolled wrong, thumb pressed against his ring. There was nothing dramatic about him. No speech. No tears. Just a man telling his wife that water still had a mouth in his mind. I could have stopped there. Instead, I heard blame. I heard him asking me to be gentle forever while he stayed the same. I heard another summer closing around me, so I softened my voice. That was my micro-shift, not kindness, strategy. I told him I wanted the party to be good for us. I said maybe he could stand near the pool for one photo, just one, so people would stop making it strange. I said I would help him. I said I was on his side. He watched me for a long second. Then he asked if being on his side meant I would not make him the joke. I told him he was too sensitive to the word joke. That was when he stopped negotiating. He took the blue towel from the clean laundry pile, folded it once, and placed it on the counter between us. The same towel from the beach, the same towel from the cookout. Then he walked out of the kitchen. I stared at it longer than I should have. A towel was a towel. Still, I did not move it until morning. 2 days before the party, Daniel came by while Ethan was at work. The father, polite, quiet. Always careful with me because I was his son's wife and he wanted peace more than truth. He stood in our hallway holding a small box of outdoor bulbs. He said Ruth was worried. Then he said he was worried too. I asked about what. He said he remembered the river. He remembered Ethan's blue lips. He remembered Ruth screaming until she had no sound left. He said fear like that does not leave just because people get older. Then he asked me not to push water jokes at the party. Not requested. Asked. That difference should have mattered. I told him nobody was planning to hurt Ethan. I said maybe the family needed to stop treating him like the accident happened yesterday. Daniel looked at me for a long time. Then he set the box on the table and said, Ethan had survived the river once. He should not have to survive his own wife too. I smiled because anger would have looked worse. After he left, I texted Maya. She did not answer for 4 hours. 4 hours. Then one line. She said maybe I should let this one go. I deleted the message. Caleb stopped replying completely. Ruth sent only practical notes about food. Lauren still wanted to come early and film setup, but even she asked if Ethan was okay with being in the clips. Everyone was getting nervous. That was how I knew the moment would work. By Friday night, the party was arranged. The lights were ready, the drinks were ordered, the towels were stacked. The guest list was final. And my husband sat at the dining table turning his wedding ring once, then letting his hand fall flat. I thought that meant surrender. It felt like permission. The pool party looked exactly how I wanted. Lights over the fence, music low at first, children already in the water, adults holding drinks near the patio, towels stacked beside the door. Lauren moved around with her phone, catching little pieces of the night. Maya stood near the food table, quieter than usual, but still there. Ethan stayed away from the pool edge. Of course, he wore a linen shirt again, sleeves rolled neatly, like he was ready to fix something instead of enjoy anything. His mother watched him from the patio. His father stood near the grill. Caleb stayed close enough to move if he needed to. The mother, the father, the friend, all waiting for me to behave like the dangerous one. At first, I kept it light. I said Ethan was supervising the water from a safe distance. I asked if anyone had brought adult floaties. A few people laughed, but not enough. That bothered me. 1 laugh, 2 smiles, 3 people looking away. Ethan came to me near the drink table. His hand touched his wedding ring, then dropped. He asked me not to do this tonight. He said he was not asking me to understand anymore. He was asking me to respect one boundary. A boundary. At his own parents' pool party. I told him I had respected his fear for years. I told him I had planned around it, defended it, softened every summer because of it. I told him he had made me feel alone beside him, like I was married to someone who could build a house but not stand inside a life with me. That part was true. He did not deny it. He only said I could be right about his silence and still wrong about this. That made me angrier than an argument would have. I told him maybe if he acted like a husband instead of a scared little boy, I would not have to drag him into adulthood. The room heard it. Maya looked down. Ruth stopped moving. Caleb's face changed. Ethan only touched his ring again. I read it as surrender. He turned slightly toward Caleb and the pool was behind him. Just 1 step away. 1 fast lesson. 1 moment everyone would finally see what I had been living with. So I put both hands against his back. And I pushed. The splash was huge. For half a second, people laughed. Then Ethan came up wrong. His arms hit the water hard. His mouth opened. He went under, came back up, then went under again. The laughter died so fast, it felt cut. Caleb jumped first. Another man followed. Ruth screamed his name. Daniel ran to the edge like the past had pulled him there by the throat. I stood with wet drops on my dress and said he was fine. I said it was shallow. I said he needed the push. They pulled him out coughing, soaked and shaking. His shirt clung to him. His hair covered his forehead. Caleb held his arm, but Ethan pushed himself upright. I already had my line ready. See? You survived. Then Ethan looked at me, and for the first time that night, he did not look away. Ethan stood by the pool, dripping onto the patio. No one spoke first. Caleb was still beside him. Ruth held a towel in both hands but did not move toward me. Daniel stood near the edge, breathing hard like he was back at that river again. I tried to laugh. It came out wrong. I said he was fine. I said everyone was acting like I had thrown him into the ocean. I said he had survived. And maybe that proved my point. Ethan touched his wedding ring. This time he did not hide it. He said that every time I saw him touch that ring, I thought he was weak. I thought he was begging the marriage to stay alive. Then he said he had been counting chances. One joke, one warning, one more night where I chose the room over him. My mouth opened, but no answer came out fast enough. He named all of it: the lake, the hotel pool, the cup of water at the birthday cookout, the blue towel. Caleb telling me about swim therapy, his father asking me not to push water jokes tonight. Nothing was new. That was the worst part. It was all already in the room. Lauren lowered her phone. Caleb told her to save the video. Ruth said I knew about the river. Daniel said he had asked me, father to wife, not to do this. I looked at Maya. She was near the gate, not beside me, not coming closer. Ethan said he had stopped arguing because I turned every argument into a stage. So he had started telling the truth quietly to the people who mattered. He said I did not need to be exposed. I kept performing the evidence myself. I said he was humiliating me. Lauren, of all people, answered. She said I pushed him after he asked me to stop. Just that. No drama. No family loyalty. Just the sentence. I stepped back, ready to tell all of them they were choosing weakness over honesty. My heel hit the wet edge. My balance went. I grabbed at air and fell backward into the shallow end. The water was not dangerous, only public. I came up soaked, hair over my face, dress heavy against my legs. No one laughed. That made it worse. Ethan looked down at me and said a wife who laughed at his trauma was not a wife he needed. Then he said he was done. The separation petition was already prepared, and the move-out agreement would come through the proper channel. 2 weeks later, I lived above a closed bakery in a rental that smelled like old sugar. Our accounts were separated before I learned how much of my life had been built on his quiet steadiness. Ruth stopped answering my calls, and Caleb blocked me after one message. Maya sent one text saying I needed help, then disappeared. Lauren never posted the video, but enough people saw it that my version died before I could tell it. I still think Ethan hid too much behind silence. I still think he made me guess what hurt him until I got tired of guessing. But I cannot call that night help anymore. I found the blue towel at the bottom of a laundry basket when I packed. It still smelled faintly like chlorine. I spent years trying to prove my husband was afraid of water, and all I proved was that he had every reason not to trust me near it.